There we go. All right, recording has started. So again, thank you and welcome to today's session, producing culturally appropriate crops in the Yazidi community. And with us today, we have a few great speakers. We've got Shahab Bashar, and his family survived ISIS's 2014 genocide against the Yazidi. Shahab was born in Sinjar, Iraq in 1984 and has a bachelor's degree in general biology from the University of, I'm probably going to say this wrong, Suleimani, Iraq. After graduating, he worked as a teacher for 6 years and as a lab technician for 4 years in Sinjar, Iraq. Shahab is fluent in English, Arabic, and Kurdish, Kumanji, and Sorani, with 3 years experience in translation and interpretation. Shahab and his family came to the United States from Sinjar, Iraq in February 2017. Shahab is currently working in client assistance at Yazidi Cultural Center since 2019, and also as a cultural liaison with Community Crops since 2018. He has a special interest in farming and helping refugees. And then we've got Amy Gerdes, who is currently the Director of Operations at Community Crops. Amy holds a bachelor's degree in biology from Nebraska Wesleyan University and took as many ecology, conservation, biology, and botany classes as she could during her undergraduate studies. Amy has worked in sustainable agriculture sector in various capacities since 2013. And I would just add, they're both modest and not self-promoters, but they are both beginning farmers themselves and urban farmers. So very excited to have you both with us today, sharing your expertise. With that, I'm going to turn it over for your presentation. And again, we'll leave some time for question and answer at the end, but we invite you to drop in your comments and your questions in the chat as we go. Thank you. Take it away.
All right, thank you so much for that introduction, Megan. And we just want to say we're really excited to be here with all of you talking about producing culturally appropriate crops in the Yazidi community. Currently, my position with Crops is as the Director of Operations. That basically means that I make sure the farm and garden programs have everything they need to operate smoothly, and I manage the production greenhouse as well. And I will turn it over to Shahab to tell y'all just a little bit more about himself.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Amy. Thank you for having me today, and thank you for this opportunity. As Megan mentioned, my name is Shahab Bashar. I am from Yazidi community. Almost 5 years in United States, almost about to be a citizen, very proud and excited. And I work for Community Crops for almost 4 years. And also beside that, I work for Yazidi Cultural Centers. And with my wife, we have farm, and we are enjoying being in United States and proud. Thank you.
So we wanted to introduce ourselves as an organization a little bit more before we get into our topics today. So Community Crops is a nonprofit in Lincoln, Nebraska. We have been around since about 2003. That's when our first community garden opened. And we have grown in a lot of different ways since then. Our mission is to provide education, advocacy, and experiences to grow local food. And we do this in a variety of ways. So we have our community garden program, which serves about 225 individuals and families with 12 community gardens. And then we also have our incubator farm, or our farm program, which encompasses quite a lot of sites and services. So we have our incubator farm at Prairie Pines, where all of our Yazidi farmers are located. We also have an urban agriculture plot in the city limits, and we just opened a new 12-acre farm this past year, which we're currently developing so we can open it up to more farmers. Our Veggie Van mobile market, which is sponsored by Union Bank and Trust, also operates under the umbrella of the farm program, and we are resurrecting a CSA again this year. as a avenue of sale for our farmers and a service to the community. Lastly, we have our production greenhouse, which we use in numerous ways. We grow transplants for our gardeners there, and our farmers also are able to use this space to produce starts for their farms. So today we're going to be focused on the Yazidi Farmer Outreach and Education Project. And this is what I would consider a sub-program of our incubator farm, which at the time it was started in 2019, did come with a series of intensive workshops that were available to the farmers growing at our incubator farm sites. And you might be kind of asking yourself, well, Lincoln has so many different refugee and immigrant populations, like why are we so focused on the Yazidi community? And this really came about because of an observation made by our garden staff at the time. So we knew that we had a lot of Yazidi gardeners in that program, and they were very experienced producers. And they were growing these beautiful gardens, and they were always asking for more space, which unfortunately, due to some restrictions of that program and just the demand of garden space, we couldn't provide. So as we were working to find a solution to this, to help meet their needs, it really became clear that this was an opportunity to connect those gardeners and this community with our farm program. Obviously, this did not happen in the blink of an eye overnight. So a lot of things needed to fall into place to make this a reality. One of those things that was really critical to this project was that we collaborated with the Yazidi Cultural Center. So they not only helped with recruitment, getting the word out about this opportunity in the community, but I think during that time, we also were able to learn a lot about the new farmers that we were going to be working with and learn more about their history so we could meet their needs in an appropriate way. We also needed a way to communicate with these new farmers. So this is when Shahab came on staff as Yazidi cultural liaison. Shahab, as we mentioned, speaks Arabic and Kurdish, and as well as English and probably some languages that I am forgetting at this time. The other major change that we needed to be considerate of was just that we needed to shift or change some of how we taught that workshop series I mentioned previously. So our farm program manager at this time did a lot of research on adult learning styles, as well as trauma-informed behaviors and how those two things meet and might interact with one another. So this didn't result in major changes to the content of the workshops, but did kind of affect how materials might be delivered, especially in relation to making sure they were easily translatable. So I will turn it over to Shahab from here to introduce us in more detail to the Yazidi peoples.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Yeah, I will talk about who are Yazidi, where they come from. I mean, a little background about Yazidi. Yazidi, they are a religious minority group in the majority of them, they are in northern of Iraq, but there is also Yazidi in Russia, Armenia, Georgia, Turkey, Syria. Recently, many of Yazidi immigrate to Germany, Australia, Canada, and United States, mostly Lincoln. Yeah, mostly the majority of Yazidi, they are speaking Kurdish. There is two dialogue of Kurdish. The Yazidi speak Kurdish Kurmanji, but because they are living in the Arabic country, Arabic is my language. Many of Yazidi went to Arabic school, and you could say many Yazidi speak also Arabic. I want to here to focus a little bit how Yazidi came to the United States. They come, you could say they came to in two big waves to the United States. After Gulf War, after in 1990, some of Yazidi become a refugee in camp in Syria, and then they come through the special, I think, special visa through special program to the United States. Some of them choose the United States, some of them choose it Europe, and others choose it Canada. And then it wasn't a lot, just a few family. Some of them went to New York, some came to Lincoln, Nebraska. They who came to Lincoln, Nebraska encouraged the second wave, which started after 2003, after United States invaded Iraq and took over the Saddam Hussein regime. So many of Yazidi worked as help the United States Army, I mean troops, with translation, with advisory, with interpretation. So these people working with the United States, their life was in danger. Then they applied to come to the United States. So through a special visa. So they came to they didn't know about a lot about the United States. They came to their relative and friends. Some of them were in Lincoln, I mean, one after one, and there's about more than 4,000 in the United States. Most of them, they are in Lincoln, about 3,000 to 4,000 of this Yazidi, they are building its community in Lincoln, Nebraska. All of these, all the Yazidi back to Iraq, Sinjar, especially the home country, they have a lot of experience in farming because they live it in mountain area, in countryside area. So here in Lincoln, Nebraska, they are enjoying their lives. They are getting their citizens. They are building their life, buying home, becoming many of them, they are gardeners, and some of them, they are becoming farmers. I mean, they are building its community, its cultures, and they are communicating with its their new community in United States, which Lincoln. Also, some of the Yazidi in another state, they are coming to Lincoln. They guess it's easy to live and it's not that expensive. Yeah, thank you for listening, and I will say next slide, please, Amy.
So as we were building this presentation, we were just having a lot of discussions about the importance of food to all people. And I wanted to share this really beautiful quote from Shahab, where he pointed out that there is a special relationship, an extra special relationship between the Yazidi people and their food. And I want us to think back maybe just a slide when Shahab was explaining how the Yazidi are an agrarian society. A lot of them are farmers by trade and historically. And this means that a lot of them are also cooking primarily and eating primarily at home with their households or families. So to continue this quote, Shahab went on to say that the Yazidi are making art through their cooking, and they're doing that with culturally specific foods. So what is a culturally specific food, right? These are food items that are relevant, appropriate, and unique to a specific culture or ethnic community. This definition is from the food group in Minnesota. That source PDF is listed on the slide, and I think maybe we can put that in the chat for those of you who would like to read that publication further. They are a nonprofit in Minnesota. So for our purposes during this, the remainder of this presentation, we might also refer to culturally specific foods as culturally important, culturally appropriate, or culturally relevant. And for us, we relate this heavily back to specialty crops because that's what our farmers are producing. So what shapes what a culturally specific food looks like? How do these come to be? And a lot of factors can go into this. One is just the geography and climate we might find ourselves in. So this is going to affect what we can grow. And that, of course, directly translates into what is seasonally available to us and what we cook with, what we use in our food traditions. Of course, those food traditions can also be interwoven into other traditions, right? So they might show up in our religious practices, they might show up in our holidays, they might show up just in our rituals, say our marriage practices or funeral rites. So they can show up in a variety of ways, and those foods available to us can gain more importance in that way. Of course, there are multiple benefits to having access to a culturally specific or important food, or on the flip side, being able to provide that if that is the position that we find ourselves in. One of the major benefits is that having culturally important foods available to us really helps prevent the loss of tradition. So when we lack foods, right, that we use maybe during a specific holiday, when we lack that, it definitely affects how we continue to practice it, or if we continue to practice that specific tradition. So having culturally appropriate foods really preserves culture in this way. Of course, there is a physical health benefit. We all know that having nutritionally dense, fresh foods available to us improves our physical health. But this could also show up in alternative ways. Maybe this shows up as in our genetics, right? So if we evolve alongside a plant, let's say that plant might be more nutritionally impactful to us than it would be to someone who doesn't have that relationship. The last thing I want to touch on as we're talking about the benefits is just that moving from your home country to somewhere else creates a really huge sense of displacement, and that can come with a lot of stress and shock. Those can definitely show up in different ways. There's a big learning curve there. You might be adapting to different systems, currency systems, learning a different language, etc. And when we have those familiar food items available to us, it can really combat that stress and lessen that shock and provide a sense of stability that it can have a positive effect on our mental health. So as with anything, we might encounter some barriers when we are trying to access a culturally important food, or again, on the flip side, provide that as a service. These can show up in pretty simple ways. This could be just lack of access to seeds. Maybe we can't find things locally or even in online stores. This could be related back to just difference in climate and growing season. Perhaps we can't actually grow something that we are used to producing and eating. These barriers can also manifest in more complex ways too. So perhaps they're showing up in our policy. Maybe we encounter policies that prevent us from producing something or import something. I think the example I would use here is livestock. So let's say it's very important to me traditionally to be able to raise my own goats and have that relationship with that animal before I consume that animal. Well, living in Lincoln, there are certainly policies that prevent me from having those goats within city limits. So that would be an example there. And to close out this discussion on barriers, I wanted to mention that there is quite a contradiction between food as a commodity as we see it in our society versus food as an experience, right? As it relates back to the importance that it gains through our traditions. So we wanted to take just a little mental pause here before we continue on and talk about the important work our Yazidi farmers are doing. And we have a question for you, which is, what foods are culturally important to you? And once you've named those things, can you just take it a step further and identify why those are so important to you? We're not going to spend time discussing this as a group, but we would love to see you put those things in the chat if you're so inclined. And I will turn it back over to Shahab from here.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Amy. Here, sorry if someone is hungry because it's at noon or 1:30. I'm going to talk about food. What crops are important to Yazidi, culturally important to Yazidi community? I have a list here. I want to talk about which one of them is Swiss chard. The leaves of Swiss chard. It goes to a couple meals of Yazidi. The main one is a dolma. I will talk about it later. Also, eggplant. This is a part of the Yazidi kitchens, and it goes to a lot of meals, and they are cooked in different ways. Pickling pepper, as at County Crab we named it pickling pepper. Actually, it's Lombardo sweet pepper, Viato from Italy. Carrying celery look like parsley, but different taste and smell, and they are very favored by Yazidi community and also Arab Kurdish community. Garden cress is like garden cress is spicy leaves, and they are Yazidi community believe they are really good for diabetes and for health. Daikon radish and all other radishes, they are part of the Yazidi kitchen. Their salad, mostly they are using slicing it, eating with another meal or with salad. Slicing tomato and all kinds of the tomato, they are really important and part of the Yazidi kitchen. Onion, with all types of onions, but dry onion, green onion, red onion, they are part of Yazidi kitchen. If in the lunch and dinner time, cucumber as well, and turnip and beets, they are together. Yazidi use them, mix them, and make a pickle from both of them, which is the red pickle. Fava bean, which was so hard to find here when we came here, so Yazidi grew it. They find in the local markets. They eat green our dry seed both way, and it goes to many meal. Cowpea, also like fava bean, sunflowers is another seeds. They are favored by Yazidi community. Chickpeas, okra. Yazidi make soup of okra is famous in our community. Grape and grape leaf. Grape is Yazidi has a lot of experience and is favored by Yazidi back to their country, back to Iraq. Also, grape leaf goes like Swiss chard. The leaf of it use it for a special meal which called dolma. Fig is kind of very important for holidays and event. Gondola, unfortunately, it's hard to grow here because it's wild. It grows in mountain area. It's so favored by this community. Jerusalem artichoke root is part of the pickling in Yazidi community. Olive is part of the pickling and is really interested in the community. Next slide, Amy, please. Yeah. Why this very important to culture? Why this crops, vegetables very important to Yazidi community? Yazidis food, our diet primarily is from vegetables. There's a lot of, if you open the Yazidi kitchen door of the refrigerator, you see a lot of these vegetables. Or if you look at Yazidi at a store or at local market, you see maybe 70% of its card is vegetables and crops. There's, as Amy mentioned, my code, there's a special relationship between Yazidi I mean, the Yazidi life and food. Food is very important in this community, in a lot of ways, like in event or in traditionals. Here I want to talk about two meal they are used in the lunch or in dinner in Yazidi community. One of them is burghul or rice. Burghul or rice is cooked in the noon mostly in Yazidi community, and beside that there's a soup, or there's soup of chicken, soup of the lamb, or soup of the okra, eggplants, and salad would eat. Mainly this in the noon, but if we do it like if we talk about the dolma is a special meal. Not every day we are cooking it because it needs a lot of time. Dolma is a rice, but should be a rice of the leaf grape or a Swiss chard. It's wrapped, the rice wrapped with the leaf grape or a Swiss chard. Also, there's a tomato. They are digging tomato, putting rice on it, and they are building in the eggplant, tomato, onion, bell peppers, and they put something extra between them, like flavors like beans, carrot, and this special meal mixed with the all these leaves and vegetables. Some foods are really important to Yazidi and related to the holidays. Yazidi has, I mean, Yazidi holidays and also events when someone pass away and when someone get married. Yazidi do a lot of food. Here I want to talk about scared seeds, which is really important in one of our holiday, which in mid of the February we are celebrating a holiday called, the name in Kurdish called Kudr Alias, and we are cooking. I mean, we are mixing seed, and they say should be seven seeds because Yazidi believe in one God and one another, not person like angels, seven angels. There's a lot of things about number seven. So one of these things related to religion and the community culturally. Seven type of seed are mixed and graded together and celebrating. One of them should be barley, another wheat, corn, chickpeas, lentils, sunflower, cantaloupe. If there's hard to get one of it, I mean, they could change like cantaloupe to the watermelon or to another seeds, but should be seven of them. I mean, why these seeds? Why barley and wheat, corn, chickpeas? Because this is it was available according to, I mean, for the geography of that area, there wasn't a lot of type of seeds. Yeah, thank you. Amy, could you just next slide?
So we're going to talk about accessing seed now. This is, of course, very important and critical point in being able to grow a culturally specific crop. So for us, I would say that this has been relatively easy for our farmers to access seed with like several notable challenges. Big challenges. But if you think back to the list of crops that Shahab just talked about, there's a lot of familiar things on there, right? So our farmers are able to get those many of those seeds or suitable substitutes from major seed companies. Johnny's is one that we highly utilize. We have sourced from High Mowing and seeds from Italy before. And one that is not listed here, but we use as well is Kitazawa. So we haven't explored this resource super heavily, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the US germplasm system because it is such an extensive resource. And I believe we do have that link to put in the chat again for those of you who'd like to explore it. So this is basically a big seed library. It's managed by the USDA, and you're able to visit their website and purchase seeds from this resource. Now, when those avenues of access fail, right, there are some other places we can turn to. So we could save seeds from the crops that we have, which we'll get into a little bit later. But we do have some gardeners and farmers in our programs that have been successful at traveling to their home country and bringing seeds back. I mention that because it is a way that people seek access, a method that has been utilized before, we know that, but with the caveat that we want to try to exhaust other options first, because there's obviously some barriers in being able to bring seed back across a border. To do that legally, we have to have a lot of paperwork and permits. And that is quite an extensive and challenging process, or it can be. So we have faced some challenges here. I would broadly categorize those into import restrictions and seed shortage, and also just the difference in our climate and growing season. I will use the example of our pickling pepper that Shahab was explaining previously to illustrate kind of the challenges with importation. So the Yazidi farmers grow a lot of this pepper. It is very important to the community. But we have historically sourced this from seeds from Italy, which is obviously they're mostly bringing seeds from Europe, and Europe has been really affected by brown rugose virus, which is a virus that affects Solanaceae crops. And unfortunately, our lovely pickling pepper was one of the seed stock that was affected. So it was no longer safe or responsible for us to bring it across a border in the interest of preventing the spread of that disease. So we went through a process of kind of trial and error, searching maybe corners of the internet that we would not normally turn to find a suitable replacement. Unfortunately, a lot of those were not bad failures, but failures nonetheless. Maybe we didn't have very good germ rates with those replacements, or they actually ended up being something that wasn't similar enough to this product that we could use it as such. I am happy to report that we have found a solution. We'll be using a Turkish pepper this year that is almost identical to this one in like appearance and taste. So a direct outcome of this is that our farmers, many of our farmers did allocate some of their crop to seed saving, going back to that method of access. And the other one that I will briefly talk about before I turn this back over to Shahab is just that we do have differences in our growing season and what we can produce here. So some of those we might be able to overcome or find slightly different varieties that are more locally adept to our climate. I think figs is a good example here. But there are some cases, such as the Gundalia that Shahab was discussing earlier, that to our knowledge, that crop is not adept to our soil type or our climate. And I will let Shahab take over.
Thank you, Amy. Yeah, rebuilding a food chain. I'm going to talk about the accessing to the market. How was difficult or the challenges in the beginning of the projects when Yazidi started the farming project with the community crops. The main, I would say there was a lot of challenge in the beginning about how the weather and how we get seeds, and that then the one of the biggest challenge was how to sell their produce, how to access to markets and restaurants, and would be interested in a couple of years. It was so hard to get to the wholesale or to the big market or to sell to their produce. First year it was introducing people to our product. It wasn't easy. We try to sell. Yazidi farmers try to sell to individual customers and even to some of the local market. One of them, it was Arabic market. Then in the second year of the farming, they trust our produce, and we are growing naturally and special produce, and no one else growing. So more market, local market supported these projects and bought from Yazidi farmers. So it was accessing to more market. Restaurants and other businesses tried. Bought some crop. I want to mention the rules of crop and the rule of mine when we try to reach out to the people. I am a part of crop. We try to reach to people and to tell them we have this, and make more communication to sell more produce to more places. One of them, crop to the community crops. Sunday, if community crop become a part of, they have a booth at Sunday market. So Yazidi farmers were able to sell at Sunday market. To individual person, to Mediterranean market, to some restaurants, open harvest and online luxury foods. And this year they are part of the CSA, and crop will accept SNAP, and which is really helpful for them. Some of Yazidi farmer, they have its customer, they coming to the farm and they selling to their customer at farm. In different way, with help of the crops, that was kind of success in the first couple years. Next slide, Amy. Of course, there's an economic impact of this produce or these programs on the you could say on the local economy of the people living in Lincolns. I'm gonna here talking about examples, Sunday markets. Many in 2019 there wasn't even couple customers from this community visiting Sunday markets. Community crop and its staff try to reach out to the people and bring more people from Yazidi community, from Arab community, from Kurdish community to Sunday market, to supporting these farmers. Also supporting a local business like Arabic market, our Mediterranean market, our open harvest. So selling this produce through this market, definitely it support their businesses. It help them. Always I am telling people, If you are buying from the local business, a local market, you are supporting Nebraska. If you are buying from the big store, your money maybe go outside of the United States. So support your family, your home. Uh, Health impact. Yazidi farmers and Yazidi community, they really believe that crops, vegetables, fruit is improve the health. I mean, it's rich in nutritionally, it's rich and help the health in a lot of ways. Most of the Yazidi, they believe that some leaves is really good for diabetes, for cholesterol. So one of our farmers said, I came here, I enjoy farming, and I'm eating from it, I am moving, I make some money, I mean the stress, I have been a refugee, it reduced the stress. I mean, it's really good for my mental health, for my situation. I mean, so hard to when someone leave its country and to go to build a new home in another country. So it's really good for health, farming. Social impact. When I came here, I couldn't find a caring celery in the local market. None of our community could find garden cress or caring celery. After crop grow it, I mean farmer, Yazidi farmer at community crop grow caring celery and garden cress. Kurdish, Arabic, and Yazidi community could enjoy this food, and it's available at local market. Next slide, Amy, please.
Okay, so we just wanted to give you a little more material to learn on your own further after we're done with this session. So here are just a few books that you might look into. One of them is The Local Food Revolution by Michael Brownlee. This isn't a book that's going to tell you a lot about culturally specific foods, but there are some good parts in here about how food sheds develop and how those are shaped and how we can impact that. If you're interested in learning more about the genocide that the Yazidi people have experienced and their resilience and experience, Nadia Murad has written this book called The Last Girl, which we actually have in the Crops Library if you ever want to borrow it from us. And the last one I wanted to include on here is really about the interwoven history between Black Americans and agriculture and their experience in the United States. So this book was written by a woman called Monica M. White, and a lot of the research from this book just came from interviews, from stories. So this is a really good resource if you want to explore traditions a little more. There's a lot of information about both food traditions and agriculture traditions, and a lot of topics about food justice efforts. So we could obviously talk about this topic all day, but we're not going to. We're going to stop here. And if you have questions for us that don't get answered in our discussion at the end of this session, or if you leave this session and you think of something that you want to ask us, you can reach us by email. My email is amy@communitycrops.org and Shahab is shahab@communitycrops.org. If you want to reach out over social media, we're on Facebook and Instagram. Our Facebook is @communitycrops and our Instagram handle is @comcrops. And from there, it looks like maybe we have 10 minutes for questions. So I'll turn it back over to our facilitators, Megan, and open for discussion. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Amy and Shahab. That was a great presentation. So yes, we do have a few minutes left. We'd love to hear your questions. Lots of great comments in the chat as to the question that Amy and Shahab posed. People sharing their different cultural memories around different produce items and different foods. But if you have any specific questions that you would like to ask Amy and Shahab, they are available here for a few minutes. And feel free to drop them in the chat, or we're a small group. You can also feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question aloud, whatever's more comfortable. I have one to get started. Shahab, you mentioned the positive impact on the local economy and the outreach. And I think one thing that I would love for you to talk about more is not only, the change and the impact on our own farmers for you having being at the farmers market, but could you talk a little bit about kind of the ripple effect you saw and how it helped other vendors when you started inviting new community groups to that farmers market that maybe hadn't been going before?
It's for me, right?
Yes, please.
Okay, yeah. For a Sunday market, Amy and I every 2 weeks went to Sunday market. The first, before Amy, Matt Pirog and I went, I couldn't find any refugee. I know them because we know a lot. I know most of them. So one day I was there and I saw 4 people. They were just walking, and I just tell them, "Come on, do you know how to use your Snap?" And I helped them. Last year, Amy and I, every 2 weeks, I was in the morning. I am in couple group. I'm in 2 or 2 group in the community. I was sending a nice picture of our produce to the groups of Yazidi. Sending message to the family they are interested in buying produce. Hey, we are at the Sunday market and our produce is fresh. If you want to come by, there's a Snap here. It could accept Snap. So I try to encourage people, even in the event or in the it's a social event. I encourage people to come to Sunday market or to buy from the local. There was at the end of the season we could see a lot of refugees at Sunday market, and we see a lot of different. Then we could sell more. And this a step we could encourage many people to buy locally, and really healthy, good food.
Yeah, and I would add, and Shahab, feel free to jump in here, but one of those products that is important that maybe we didn't talk about in this presentation is honey. And there is one main honey vendor at the Sunday market here in Lincoln who has just a lot of business from our Yazidi neighbors.
Yes, thank you both. We've got another question here from Sarah. Are you interested in expanding the farm to other ethnic groups as well?
Yeah, I think the short answer is yes. One of the groups that we do work with in our gardens, similar to like the connection we made with the Yazidi farmers, is we do have a lot of Karen gardeners. So we would like to explore that relationship, I think, and make that connection, maybe, if that is something that community wants. I think, with any expansion or any new project, we do have to be thoughtful about if we're pushing an idea on someone versus if this is something that maybe a community or individuals in that community actually want to explore. So